You know, vampire hunters are pretty lucky that it's garlic that weakens vampires and not some other kind of plant. If it were marijuana that they kept in their vampire vanquishing toolkit, they'd never be able to take them on. The stakes would just be too high. In today's humble opinion, we're forgetting everything we know about inkwells in The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing Final Cut. The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing Final Cut, besides earning an award for our longest title in this series to date, is an action role-playing game developed and published by Neocore Games. Rather, what I should say is that it's the stories and elements of the 3 games of the Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing series cut into one convenient game, finally. The world of these aforementioned incredible adventures is remarkably grim. Your father, Dr. Van Helsing, has brought about a period of peace between humans and monsters by wresting humanity from the clutches of malevolent forces. But that was years ago. Now the world finds itself in turmoil once more. Something new and unknown threatens to upset the balance. Dr. Van Helsing, having decided that he's getting far too old for this shit, entrusts you, his son, J.I. Badit Games Van Helsing, with answering the troubled cry for help. And so you venture forth into the eerie gothic world. It is a world tainted by occultism and strange science, a universe of solemnity and death. A harrowing tale of danger, intrigue, and adventure. Or rather, it would be if it could hold up its end of the atmospheric imagining that it's instilled inside your brain for longer than a few moments. You see this two-headed cow?
Yes, I can talk. So what?
It can talk. Why? Your guess is as good as mine. But it absolutely and unequivocally demolishes any form of respect that I have for the story of this game, which is unfortunately the only part of the game that actually had any potential to be impressive. Between inclusions like that, the voice acting...
They all forgot that monsters are dangerous. That's what peace does to you.
And the writing at large, it's impossible to take it seriously. And I mean, I guess that's obviously what they're going for, but if you don't want to make a serious story, why have it take part in a serious setting? Why the universe of Van Helsing? To make an RPG and specifically pick a universe only to neither take it seriously nor have your players take it seriously makes it seem like it's arbitrarily decided, which means that it feels like I got all hyped up for some potentially foreboding or spooky themes only to get awkward banter between main characters and clunky pacing. For instance, how Lady Katarina says that you can handle yourself in a fight and then immediately afterwards turns into a literal bat out of hell demon lady and makes you wonder what the fuck just happened. Now, just a few moments prior, we had established that Lady Katarina had a dark side to her and that it somehow helped Van Helsing out of sticky spots, so we have some clever foreshadowing in place, but then they just instantly pull the veil off like a kid so fucking pleased with the massive shit he took in his father's work boots that he didn't even give dear old dad time to guess what before blurting it out as loudly as humanly possible. Like, man, that reveal would have been cool and shocking at the end of the tutorial section we're learning mechanics in. Maybe in a boss fight that's particularly difficult to overcome by myself and having her help me out of a sticky spot, you know? It's almost as blatant as the product description's foreshadowing of you never know who the real monsters are, only to have the first boss abruptly end a fight and reveal that, surprise, he wasn't an asshole all along. That might have been interesting to allude to at all in the game beforehand, or a post-mortem discovery that might have been thought-provoking. The boss is also a great place to segue into game mechanics, which is what I'm sure most people care about because it pretty much sums up the overall feel of the game. Clunky as a motherfucker. In the case of the boss, you fight him once, he warps you to another dimension where he summons several summon totems, and then after you destroy all of those, you fight him again. Why? Why not make the totems what you have to fight in order to get to the boss in the first place? What is the point? I know it's not to make the fight more perilous, because goddamn if I walk 3 feet to the left and fuck off for a few moments, I'll be right back up to full health. It's tedious is all it is. Just like when you beat him and you talk to the mayor, he says he'll answer your questions, but he absolutely must get back to the village right the fuck now and we'll answer them then. Or you could answer him in the cave because I have to go back to the town to get to the next mission point anyway. Or you could have it explained in dialogue in a cutscene as I leave the cave, as if we discussed it together before parting ways while he still made haste to the town. Nope, gotta go back to town, because combat really isn't that different. It feels just like they arbitrarily toss a couple of enemies at you every few milliseconds, which is almost on par with similar games in the genre, but because of how combat actually is, it feels a lot less impactful. Most of the time you can just stand in place and hold the left mouse button down while Katarina takes the brunt of the attack. Not much action going on in this here action RPG, eh? It's disappointing because they have clearly put the effort into including a rage bar and skill trees for all 6 of their classes, but there's just no point to them. You could argue that turning the difficulty up could make it more challenging and meaningful, but I played it on the normal setting. If this is too easy, what's the point of having an easy setting? Is this the way the game was meant to be played? Normally, The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing Final Cut can be found on Steam for the extravagant price of $44.99, which is way too overpriced for what it is. Sure, there's a lot of content and love that went into this game, but if this is what we get to grind through, is anyone really actually going to experience it or even want to. I'd say that $20 is much closer to a fair price, though buying it at all can still be a little iffy. It's been on sale for as low as $15.29, which is far better. My advice would be to get it as cheaply as humanly possible if you decide to check it out. In gameplay, the title earns a 5 out of 10. It's not a terrible game, it's just remarkably average. It's pretty clunky and it feels horribly undertuned. Its story and universe had the potential to be its saving grace in terms of holding one's interest and immersing them in its lackluster grind fest, but they took it in such a disappointing direction that it just becomes another part of the meaninglessness. It's a gray, amorphous blob of a game that just isn't as appealing as similar titles within the genre that are capable of providing a much better experience. Value also nets itself a 5 out of 10. So far, my experiences with the bundle has been terrible, and this game doesn't do much to improve on that. While it's vaguely disappointing, it's not quite as bad as the disappointment that came with the previous titles, so for all intents and purposes, the game actually helps it out. It's not going to be what makes the bundle, but it provides an adequate platform on which other games might build a halfway decent bundle yet. With a composite score of 5 out of 10, The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing earns a C, which is just average. You might call it the adequate Adventures of Van Helsing. The intent to make a good experience was there, but it managed to fall short almost exclusively, and while it wasn't god-awful, it doesn't exactly qualify as memorable.